In this video, we are going to begin talking about value methods as opposed to the void methods that we have been talking about previously. Before we get into the details, we need to take a look at the return statement. So, the return statement, one of the things that it does is it allows you to terminate a method before the end of the method is reached. All right, so let's take a look at this return statement example. Excuse me. Okay, so in this return statement example, I have two methods. I have this method, the main method. In the main method, I just have four method calls to this method, another method. Okay, another method has one parameter, which is an int, which you can tell, right, because these are ints in these calls. And all this another method does, for the most part, right, is print the input value was whatever, right? So you can see that right here when I do that. So you can see I get 1, 2, 3 lines of output, right? But if you notice, I have four method calls in the main method when I call it. And so the reason why I don't get 4 lines of output in this program is because if you take a look, here is this if statement, and in the if statement, we haven't talked about that yet in this class, but what will happen with the if statement, I kind of have to have it in here for this to work, to show you what the return statement does, or one of the things that it does. What will happen is if the number x, right, if this parameter is equal to 7, right, what will happen is that it will hit this return statement. And that return statement ends the method immediately. As soon as a return statement is encountered, it's executed, then what will happen is we'll just go back to the calling method. All right, so let's trace through here and you can see exactly what happens. So as always, right, execution starts in the main method for a Java application. All right, and then I have a method call. The method call, it calls this another method, it's 3. Okay, so the value of the parameter x is 3 in this case. And you can see that it skips that code and prints the message. The input value is 3. It's going to bounce back to where it was called from, which is up here. And then here is another method call. So it's going to take that 5, send it over into the variable x, into the parameter x. You can see it changes right here. The program checks, is 5 equal to 7? It's not, right? So it skips that return statement and it prints out this message. Okay. All right, and then the method, all of the statements in the last statement in the method has been executed, so it jumps back to where it's called, which is line 6, right? And then there's another method call, right? And so it's going to take that 7 and pass it to that variable, and we'll see this will turn to a 7. All right, and so now, right, the value of the parameter x is equal to 7. So that makes this true. So we're going to see it hits this return statement. So you can see it executes the return statement. That is immediately going to make this return. And so this line right here completely gets skipped. It will not do any other statements in the method. It just jumps back to where it was called from without doing this here. And then negative 19, then that's going to be false, and it's going to print that out. All right. So don't worry too much about the if statement. That's in chapter 7. I just need you to see that if a return statement is encountered, right, then that will immediately end the execution of the statements in this method. No further statements will get executed in the method. It will immediately jump back to where it was called from. Okay. So the return statement, one of the uses is it allows you to end a method early. Okay. That is not its only use, though. Okay. So, but that is enough for us to start talking about what a value method is. Okay. A value method compared to void methods. A value method has to declare the type of the return value as opposed to void. Okay, so remember the return type comes after the modifiers and before the name, so the return type is right here. So if this is anything other than void, that means that this is a value method. So in this case, it's double. Okay. Remember, what does the return type specify? The return type specifies the type of the output of this method. Okay. And remember, void just tells Java there is no output. Now, when we have a value method, this says, hey, Java, the output of this method is a double. Okay. Everything in Java has to have a type right up front, and it has to be declared. So that's what we're doing here. All right. The second thing that a value method must have, it must have at least one return statement. That return statement has to provide what's called the return value. So in other words, that is the output of the method. Okay. So you can see in this example that we have down here, we have that return statement. And not only that, right, there is an expression to the right of the return keyword. And so whatever that expression is, in this case it's the area, that will be sent back to the calling program. All right, so data is going to go into methods and it's going to leave methods. So data is going to be kind of flowing through methods. All right, the entrance, right, to a method is right here, the parameter list. The exit is the return statement. So a number is going to come in here for the radius. That this is going to calculate the area, right? And then that number is going to get sent back to the method that it was called from when the method is over. Okay. All right. So value methods basically have output, whereas void methods do not. All right. So one of the things that you need to know how to do, right, is you need to know how to use the value that gets returned from a value method. Okay. Most of the time it's going to be something here like what we've done right here. All right. So here we are declaring a variable called A1. It's of type double. Okay. And then I have the assignment operator, the equals, right? And then over here, you should recognize this as being a method call. Okay, how do I know it's a method call? Well, it's a name, right? And then it has some parentheses and a value inside the parentheses. So that is a call to the calc area method that we just talked about in the previous slide. So what's going to happen here is that 7.2 is going to get sent to this value for radius right here. It's going to make some calculations. It's going to store the result in a variable called area. And then this is going to send back that entire value. All right. And what's going to happen is whatever value gets returned, the entire method call gets replaced by that value. Okay. So say it's a 5, right, that gets sent back. Then this whole thing gets replaced. The whole entire method call gets replaced with a 5. And in this case, it would put that 5 in the variable A1. Okay. So basically, with a value method, you can use the method call almost exactly like you would just use a regular variable. Okay. All right. Whatever value is inside there, in this case, it's whatever value gets returned, it will be replaced by that value. All right. Here's an example where we have a print statement and then we use a method call. Remember, we've been using variables in places like that. So you can use a method call to a value method because whatever value gets sent back is going to be replaced, right? It's going to replace this entire method call, all right? So let's take a look at an example of that. Here we have value methods. So let's open that up. Look at the value method example. All right, we're going to hit, first let's run it and just see what the output is, and we're going to get, 3 different um, statements, 3 different lines of output. Okay. So that's what it does. Let's walk our way through it. First thing, right, of course, we have the main method, as always. We have this calc area method. It has one parameter, right, called radius of type double. All right. So starting off on line 5, we have a declaration of a variable. We're declaring a variable a1. You can see over here there is a method call, right, and we're calling this value method. All right, let me make this slightly bigger. Okay, so I'm going to hit the curvy arrow here, and you're going to see that it's going to jump down to this method because it's a method call. Okay. All right, and you can see the value of the variable radius is now 7.2. That 7.2 right here got sent to radius, right? And then it's going to make this calculation, right? And you can see there's the value of area, right? So it's going to take that value, and now we've encountered a return statement. So that means that this method is over. It's the last line, but even if it weren't the last line, it would still be over. Okay, it's going to look at the value of area, which is 162 point whatever. It's going to send that back to this, and that entire method call will be replaced with this number right here. So it'll be double A1 equals this number. All right, so I'm going to click that. All right, and boom, you can see now the value of A1 is this number that got sent back. So area got sent back here. That value got stored in the variable A1. Okay, and so now we are going to use that variable A1 to print out a message, and you can see it prints out this message. All right, next line 9 right here, you can see I have a print message. All right, the difference in this one is that now I put that method call inside the printf statement, which you can certainly do. Now you may say, okay, well, when should I do this and when should I do this? Okay, so I just give you examples of 2 different ways to do that. Okay, so but let's say if you were going to use this value A1 multiple times in your program, then you're probably better off storing it in a variable. That way you don't have to keep calling the method over and over again. Whereas if you're not going to use it, you're just doing it one time, then you could do it this way, okay, and save a little memory. So here you're using a little more memory, but less CPU cycles. Here you're using less memory to do that. Okay, so now what's going to happen here is, okay, Java's going to look at this statement and it's going to say, okay, all right, here's what I got to print. And then it's going to start getting ready to print this statement. And then it's going to see, okay, there is a method call in this. So it's going to jump to this method. And it's going to pass that 4.5 into radius. So we should see radius change to 4.5. So here we go. Boom. It calls the method. Right? So it jumps down here. It passes that 4.5 into the variable radius. Right? It calculates area. So that gets updated. All right, and then boom, we hit a return statement. So it's going to jump back to wherever it was called from. Even though, right, even if this were not the last line, it would jump back. All right, and then what's going to happen? It's going to send this value of area back, and this entire expression right here is going to be replaced with this number. Okay, so it sends it back, and you can see that it uses this value right here. It gets rounded to 2 decimal places, right, because of the format specifier here. All right, and so same thing on the last one. You're going to see it's going to jump down here. Radius is now 8.7 because that's the value of R1. It calculates the area, hits that return statement, jumps back, and this entire expression is replaced by 8 point, or whatever the area is, 237 point whatever. And you can see we get that last message. Okay, so incredibly important to understand the give and take of these methods and the method calls. Remember, this is basically the entrance to the method. Data gets passed into here and gets processed, and then it gets sent back through these return statements. Okay. In the next couple videos, we'll take a look at some programming examples. And I guess I should finish this off.